I hardly dare ask, but what happens to Godfrey after this then?
The next major action is not too far from the Belgian city of Ypres, sort of between Ypres and the Passchendaele Ridge.
So this is Passchendaele that's
right.
About to happen now?
That's right, yeah.
This is like a series of really awful fixtures, isn't it? It's like...
It is, yeah.
You go and have a rest and then you've got to play the next one.
Absolutely.
It's sort of horrific fixture list.
In July 1917, the Allies launched an attack on the German lines around the village of Passchendaele, east of the Belgian city of Ypres. Passchendaele would become one of the most brutal and chaotic battles of the war. Within a few months, the countryside had been completely destroyed, and heavy rains had turned the battlefields into a quagmire. Tens of thousands of Allied soldiers were being killed, trying to advance just a few miles into German-held territory.
We're coming out of Ypres now, and as we're going up this ridge here, you can see the ground rising in front of us, and that was where the German lines ran up. Running along the top of that ridge, the British on the lower slope. And it was from these positions that the British launched their offensive, the Battle for Passchendaele.
Is Passchendaele the other side of the ridge?
Passchendaele is away to our left.
On the 26th of September, Godfrey and the Suffolks were set to launch an attack on the German lines towards the Passchendaele Ridge. But their plan came to nothing. Before they could leave their starting positions, they came under intense German artillery bombardment. By the end of the encounter, they'd suffered over 250 casualties, a third of the battalion. Godfrey survived, and he and his comrades were withdrawn from the front line and spent the winter in camps close to the town of Popperinge. The town of Popperinge, close to Ypres, was commandeered by the British Army during the war. Just off the town square was Talbot House, a club for British soldiers. Today it's a museum.
Hi, Hugh, please come in. Welcome to Talbot House.
The secretary is Jan Luagi.
So this is my grandfather, Godfrey. Right. I've got this war diary.
Oh, that's really interesting. He was in Toronto camp, which is just off the road here. So it's only about 2 miles from Popperinge.
So he would have come to Talbot House, I suppose? Or
well, there's a big chance he would have come.
Talbot House was founded by a British Army chaplain, Philip Tubby Clayton. It was unique in offering soldiers the comforts of home in the heart of the battlefield.
This is a picture taken in the other room. There was a piano, nice painting on the wall.
It also feels terribly British.
Oh yes, the ground floor was just chairs, armchairs, carpets, curtains, you know. It was a sort of a home from home. And then there was also a concert hall, you know, because Talbot House had its own orchestra.
So a really important place in the lives of the soldiers who were
definitely
in the camps around Ypres.
Oh yeah, yes. Lots of British soldiers were very fond of the garden, you see, because Ypres was a sea of mud. Here there was a garden with green grass, with birds sitting in the treetops.
Well, my grandfather was very keen on gardening, see. He kind of treated the garden, when he got back from the war, as his way of...
Really?
Kind of escaping, really. So.
Oh. Well, this was also considered as a sort of a therapy, you know, by the chap who ran the place. He said, if you do gardening, you forget all about the war.
Well, maybe that's a lesson my grandfather learnt here. You don't,
yeah, possibly.
Could be, couldn't it?
Yeah. Tubby Clayton managed to get together a chapel, you know, and again, one of the soldiers who was a good painter, he painted this, you know, what it looked like. But if you want to, we can go and have a look.
Is it still here, is it?
It's still here, yes.
Oh, no, I'd love to do that, yeah.
Okay, let's go and have a see it.
It's incredibly simple, isn't it?
Yes. we found a very nice account by one soldier who was telling his wife all about Talbot House.
And pushing through the door, I found myself at once in a different world. During the preceding 3 weeks, I had lived in a land of mud and death. Many of my best friends had passed over. Others I had seen mangled, wounded, and in agony. After some hesitation, I climbed a narrow stairway into the upper room, so that's that staircase. I had been to services often enough, both in the army and in those almost forgotten civilian days. Yet in that little upper room, in company with a few dozen other men who had been tried by fire as I had been tried, I found for the first time the courage and satisfaction that men have agreed to call a peace of God which passeth understanding. And I came down the stairs ready and able to face again the dangers and troubles of the morrow. You can see that, really.
Yeah. It brings it
It's a
all
very
home,
peaceful
doesn't
place,
it? Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, very much so.
I still don't know how his war ends. And I also need to see if I can get to the bottom of this story where he is one of the last men standing on this hill surrounded by Germans. And I don't think I've found that yet. Neither of the places we've been seem to be that.
In the spring of 1918, having spent the winter away from the front line, Godfrey Hinnells found himself once again in the thick of the action. The German High Command launched a massive attack on the Allied forces on the Western Front, the Spring Offensive. Godfrey and his new regiment, the Lincolnshires, were charged with defending the village of Witzkete on the outskirts of Ypres.
So this is Witzkete.
This is the village of Witzkete, that's right. Godfrey's unit were brought in to defend this area.
And so the Germans are there, coming
Absolutely,
towards us.
coming across this way. It was a desperate time. So as Godfrey's sitting here, they're perfectly aware that they're going to be attacked. It's not if they're going to be attacked, it's when they're going to be attacked. Sir Douglas Haig, commanding the British Expeditionary Force, the special order of the day. If you have a look at the date, it's just a few days before Godfrey was here.
To all ranks of the British Army in France and Flanders. There is no other course open to us but to fight it out. Every position must be held to the last man. There must be no retirement. With our backs to the wall and believing in the justice of our cause, each one of us must fight on to the end. The safety of our homes and the freedom of mankind alike depend upon the conduct of each one of us at this critical moment.
And so this is where Godfrey finds himself, right
So is this
in the
far
middle of it.
no further?
On the morning of the 16th of April 1918, the Germans launched their attack. Godfrey and his Lincolnshire battalion, consisting of around 400 men and vastly outnumbered, were directly in their path, holding a section of the Allied front line on the edge of the village of Witzkete.
So at 4:30 a.m. on the morning of the 16th, the enemy put down a terrific bombardment on our front line. So that's coming this way, so they're firing.
They're firing. We're on this line here, so they're coming this way.
Under cover of a dense fog, the enemy attacked on the flanks of the battalion and succeeded in breaking our line. Strong parties of the enemy then wheeled inwards and attacked both flanks of the battalion. So he's facing this way, but now he's got Germans have come that way and that way.
The Germans had broken through the British line on both sides of the village, circling back to attack Godfrey's battalion on both flanks.
This is owing to the dense fog and bombardment, it's impossible to get a clear idea of the situation. And the companies didn't know they were attacked until the enemy appeared at close quarters.
Godfrey and his comrades would have been unable to see the Germans breaking in, so the Germans appearing at you out of the fog, so from probably just a few yards away. So it's terrifying, hand-to-hand fighting.
Within hours, Godfrey's battalion had been almost wiped out. Small pockets of soldiers were left to defend the rising ground on the edge of the village, while the Germans closed in steadily from both sides.
Well, the story was that he, I think, is on the top of a hill with kind of 9 other men and surrounded, and manages then to retreat or escape somehow. According to my Aunt Margaret, he said that they kind of had to use the bodies of their dead colleagues as kind of walkway. But I'm sure you couldn't ever really verify that. That would never be in here, would it?
I think it's 86 men, 87 men made it out of this action. So the account of there being 9 men, that might be 9 men from his platoon.
So how many would have started the action?
Well,
so 80 something?
No, perhaps 400.
Right, okay. So you've lost 3/4 of the company.
Of the entire battalion.
So you think this is probably where that story of 9 men
it ties in,
comes from?
It ties in very well. There's no other action within Godfrey's service that would tie in with this.
Well, I'm glad I know where it is. I'm glad I wasn't there at the time.
The defence of Witzkete marked the end of Godfrey's frontline service. After the war, he returned to his hometown of Bury St Edmunds, where he got married and spent the rest of his life. He died in 1974.
It's been a very interesting journey. One of the aspects of it which it's really kind of rammed home is that this was a war fought in farmland. It was just a sort of muddy, bloody, horrifying mess. I'm glad I now understand the landscape. I have a better feeling for what it was like and how awful it was. I understand entirely why neither of my grandfathers really wanted to talk about the war, because why would you want to talk about the war? It's so unremitting in its sort of awfulness that I imagine you wouldn't really want to inflict it on anyone else. In the end, they might not have talked about it, but I am delighted that they had the choice not to talk about it. In other words, that they got home.